as I walked down the dark corridor and turned the corner into what became a kitchen, I saw on the butcher block a hog that had been gutted. And there, as more light came into view, blood on the walls, blood on the floor, blood, blood, blood. And as I thought to myself, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life, the chainsaw started to sound, and the guy came out of the refrigerator, and I squealed like the pig. Ah! Haunted houses are not my thing. They are not my thing at all. And even as we're in the antechamber waiting to go in, there was this sound of this guy's voice yelling, 5,000 scorpions. And at first I was like, why? Like, why is that? But then after a while, when you think about 5,000 scorpions, you're like, oh my goodness. Because then you're walking in and you think there's going to be 5,000 scorpions. Not a fan. Not a fan. I think life is scary enough. I think early November is scary. I think there's things that are happening in life that, just walking down the hallways of this place and running into a mannequin of Gary called Scary Gary is terrifying. And you wouldn't mind, but they keep moving it on me, so I lull myself. I'm like, I've been here almost a year and a half. Things are fine. Yeah. And then, and then you see Gary in real life. He's like, hey, and you're like, ah. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. And I just think that Halloween is something that is very American. I read in an article this week that Australians have adopted Halloween as their own, but some of the Aussies are not for it. They're like, get that out of here, get it back to America, because the candy prices are going up, and some people are decorating and all these things. It's a big deal. And some of you, as the first kind of glimpse of summer faded, started to decorate your houses. Great. Some of you plan on trick-or-treating, whether it's with your grandchildren or your children, or you're just one of those people that trick-or-treats at a certain age. That's fine. I have a very good Halloween costume that I've been doing maybe about like 15 years now. I go as a layperson. I dress in jeans and like a little nice sweater, fall sweater, and I've got a bag of Lay's potato chips and just kind of walk around. Yeah. I know. It's a lot. Bear with me. But I think in the midst of this holiday, which one day alone, the U.S. spends $11.6 billion on Halloween, that as good as it is, and I'm not disparaging Halloween, I would just encourage all of us here, believers in the Lord, to remember what Halloween is so that we can remember how to live in the great spirit, the genuine spirit of Halloween. So first, what is Halloween? Maybe some of you don't know that Halloween actually means All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Eve. What is hallow? Remember, in the Our Father, we say, hallowed be thy name. Hallowed is a sense of holy, of sanctity. And so All Hallowed Eve is the day before the vigil of all the saints that we come to honor. Now, I really think that most of us, almost I would say all of us, are in an understanding of Halloween as a thing where we dress up and we give candy and maybe have a pot of chili, maybe you get together with the neighbors, you get some spooky kind of stuff going on, and it's totally benign and it's fine. It's no big deal. But there is a little sliver in the world of perhaps mockery of what happens the next day. Again, I'm not accusing anybody of that here, but I think we just need to remember that sometimes maybe we go overboard. And maybe there's some times where we actually forget what happens on November 1st. And I would just like, since it's coming up, and we probably won't see it until November 1st or beyond that, is just to remind you of what All Saints' Day is. Think about all of the people who have gone before us trying to live the gospel. And we've got 2,000 years of this. People that have been showing up and saying, I believe Jesus is real. I want an encounter with God. I believe that just because he died and he rose, that is not gone from the scene. I believe that Jesus wants to dwell in me. And that Jesus dwelling in me means that these stories aren't just something that are stuck long ago in some history book, but that they're living stories. They're a lived reality. Wow, this person goes and has this encounter with Jesus in the gospel. Could that person now be me? Is it my opportunity to receive the good book and to allow it to be something that is how I live and how I change my life? To be able to not worry so much about what other people say, but about what Jesus, the living God, says. Having lived in that and living in it, I'll tell you, is really frightening. It's scary because you don't walk around the corner scared with like some boogeyman type thing in a haunted house, but you do have to face, maybe in some ways, those parts of the gospel that maybe I'm not living, maybe that you're not living. And it requires a transformation, and it's not just do better, it's let him love you. And oftentimes, I don't let Jesus love me because I'm afraid of what it might mean. Don't come any closer because I don't want you to come into this darkness. And Jesus we talk about the light of Christ all the time. That's why we light these candles here to remember that he's present. That's why this red candle's lit to remember that he's present in the tabernacle. He says, I shine my light of love on everything. And I'm not afraid of where you've been or what you do. I just want to be with you. And I want to show you the great happiness of life. That's what all these saints that have gone before us, that we talk about sometimes, that we ask their intercession for, that's why they're here. These are the people that have gone into the Hall of Fame, as it were. You don't think maybe some of the players on the Yankees or the Dodgers, I know, I don't want them to be in the World Series either, but do you never think that maybe some of them looked at some of how the Hall of Famers played? And maybe some of them might walk into Yankee Stadium on Monday night with just a little shiver because it's the house that Ruth built. Yes, I know it's not the exact house, but the hallowed grounds are there. So in the same way, why can't we look to some of the saints and say, you kind of remind me of me. Your story, you're one of my patrons. Maybe you're somebody that I can look to and learn from because this gospel stuff is hard. This gospel stuff is tough. I encourage you, we talk about things here as a holy day of opportunity. I invite you to really make an attempt to find an All Saints' Day Mass, just as a next step in your faith. We've got one here at 5:30 on Friday. We've got the Med Campus one at noon. Don't all y'all come, because it's going to be too big. We're not going to fit in Little Danforth Interfaith Chapel. We can fit 40 snugly. But maybe to find, maybe even nearby your house, is there a Mass time that you could go to before you do your trick-or-treating? Maybe that's a stretch. But maybe is there something Friday morning that you could find before work or before you start your day? And then just to be able to listen to the readings and to be encouraged that All Saints' Day is really about reminding you that you're not alone in this journey, that there are other people who have made it to the experience of God's loving embrace and started living that way as saints here on heaven, as examples to others. And their lives were hard too. They were filled with a lot of uncertainty about where they lived and what was happening in their time. They were ones that had family dynamics that were not rosy and cozy. They were ones that some of them endured really heavy crosses. But since they had invited Jesus into their lives, they were able to see that he was the one that satisfied, and they were able to endure whatever came because they weren't enduring it just by themselves. They kept coming to the altar to receive the grace and his mercy and his kindness. Gospel, Jesus asks, what do you want me to do for you? And I think that's something that all of us need to hear Jesus asking us today. It's not just in there, again, as a story. It's Jesus living, really, asking you, whom he loves, what do you want me to do for you? And answer. You don't have to shout it out, please. That would be scary. But to answer, and maybe some of those things are really tough. Lord, I want you to fix this thing that has not been fixed for several years. And maybe it doesn't get fixed. Doesn't mean that Jesus isn't with you in it, or that he doesn't care. Or maybe, if you're asking boldly, and if it's in his will, maybe it happens. Who knows? But to not only hear Jesus asking you, what do you want me to do for you, but to have the courage like the saints have before us, and other people are trying to live as well, for you and I to ask Jesus, what do you want me to do for you? I know it smacks of JFK, but that's all right. You know, it's like, ask not what your country can do for you, right? But Jesus is the OG, like he's the one that had it first, right? I'll tell you what OG means later. Okay, but in the sense of knowing that Jesus really does care about you, then maybe as you're trying to live this Christian life, can you ask Jesus during your prayer, what do you want me to do for you? And maybe some of those things will be surprising. Maybe some of those things are just everyday things that will mean a lot when we put the effort into them. Maybe we start to see the fact that God is calling us to be saints, and that doesn't have to be a terrifying reality. In fact, it's the place where we find real joy.